Have you ever felt like navigating friendships at work is like walking a tightrope? One wrong step and it's all over.
Oh, absolutely.
Today's deep dive is all about that and how misjudging those lines can cost you everything, even an empire. We're tackling one of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power Law number 2.
Oh, this is a juicy one.
It really is. Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies.
Whoa, right. It's such a counterintuitive concept, isn't it? It almost feels wrong to even think about it like that.
Right, like, isn't that the opposite of what we're taught?
Exactly. But Green lays out some seriously compelling historical examples to prove his point.
Buckle up, listeners, because we're going way back to 9th century Byzantium for a story that feels like it's straight out of a movie. I'm talking intrigue, betrayal, the whole 9 yards.
Ooh, I love a good historical drama.
Right. So picture this. The year is 856 AD. Michael III takes the throne. He's young, inexperienced, and everyone's vying for a piece of his power.
A recipe for disaster.
And that's where our other main player comes in, Basilius, Michael's trusted friend and former stable hand.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the story goes that Basilius actually saved Michael's life. Something about a runaway horse.
Classic tale of loyalty.
Right. And Michael, obviously feeling super indebted, showers Basilius with gifts. Education, a prominent position in court, even gives him his own mistress as a wife.
Talk about a close confidant.
Wow, that's some serious trust right there. It makes you wonder if maybe Michael was overcompensating a little, you
Yeah.
know? Like maybe he felt like he needed to tie Basilius to him with all these extravagant gestures.
Interesting point. It's like he was trying to buy his loyalty and friendship. Maybe. Or maybe he was just trying to express his gratitude in the best way he knew how. Either way, it sets up this really interesting power dynamic between them.
Totally. And at first it seems like a heartwarming story of friendship. But, spoiler alert, things take a very dark turn.
Oh, they always do.
Right. And here's where we start to see those warning signs that Greene's talking about Basilius now living the good life, starts developing a taste for power. The more he gets, the more he wants.
A classic power corrupts
Yeah,
scenario.
exactly. But is it the power itself, or is it more about unchecked ambition?
Ooh, good question.
It's like he forgets where he came from, forgets that Michael is the reason he's even in a position of power.
That sense of entitlement can be blinding.
Totally. It's a classic case of getting a taste of the good life and then just wanting more, more, more. And tragically, Michael, blinded by his trust in Basilius, ignores all the warning signs.
Oh, no, there are always warning
Oh,
signs.
yeah. His own uncle, Bardas, sees right through Basilius's facade and tries to warn Michael, but Michael just dismisses him. It's like he couldn't even fathom the idea that his best friend, the guy who saved his life, could betray him.
It's heartbreaking, and it illustrates the danger of letting our emotions cloud our judgment, especially when power dynamics are involved.
Totally. Because when we're blinded by sentiment, by our emotional attachments, we become vulnerable to those who might want to take advantage.
Precisely. And in Michael's case, that vulnerability proves fatal.
Are you ready for the tragic ending to this story?
Hit me with it.
So, picture this, Michael. After a night of heavy drinking, let's just say, wakes up to find himself staring at the wrong end of a sword.
Oh, no.
Yeah, surrounded by soldiers with his best friend Basilius looking on as they stab him to death.
Brutal. That's cold-blooded.
Talk about a power move. But it gets worse.
Worse. How can it get worse?
Basilius then parades Michael's head on a pike through the streets.
No way. Talk about adding insult to injury.
I know, right? It's like something out of Game of Thrones, only this actually happened.
That's insane. It really shows how easily ambition can twist someone.
Absolutely. And just like that, Basilius takes the throne for himself. Michael, thinking he was acting in his own best interest by trusting his friend, ended up sealing his own fate.
It's a classic cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And a pretty stark illustration of what can happen when we let blind trust cloud our judgment.
It makes you wonder at what costs loyalty right there.
Exactly.
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah, you really have to wonder if trusting anyone is even worth it.
Right. It's enough to make you want to swear off friendships altogether.
Maybe not completely.
Okay, good point.
Because Green doesn't just leave us hanging with a big never trust anyone sign. He actually offers a really interesting alternative.
Okay, I'm listening.
So let's jump ahead a few centuries to 10th century China. We're talking about Emperor Song now. He's facing his own set of challenges. A whole dynasty built on suspicion and betrayal.
Okay, I can already tell this is going to be good. Emperors, betrayals. Set the stage for us.
So for centuries, the Chinese Empire was basically stuck in this crazy cycle of coups and assassinations. Imagine being emperor, knowing that at any moment, someone might try to take you out.
Talk about a high-stress job. It'd be impossible to relax.
Exactly. Emperor Sung knew that he couldn't rule effectively with this constant threat looming over him. So he came up with a plan, a strategy that on the surface seemed completely counterintuitive.
Oh, I love a good counterintuitive strategy. Spill the tea.
Instead of trying to eliminate his rivals, he decided to embrace them.
Wait, what? Embrace them, as in give them a hug.
Not exactly. He decided to disarm them with luxury.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Tell me more.
So Sung throws this lavish banquet, right? He invites all the most powerful military leaders,
Yeah.
all the guys who could potentially overthrow him.
Oh, so the tension in that room must have been off the charts.
You can imagine. The opulent surroundings, the finest food and wine. Everyone's putting on a good face, but underneath it all, pure anxiety.
No doubt. And Sung, mastermind that he is, uses that anxiety to his advantage.
Exactly. As the night goes on, he does something completely unexpected.
Mm.
He orders all the guards out of the room.
Whoa, talk about a power move. So the generals are trapped, right? Alone with the emperor and no protection whatsoever.
Precisely. And they're terrified. They think it's a set up a mass execution, maybe.
I mean, I would too.
Right. But Sung had something far more clever up his sleeve.
All right, I'm on the edge of my seat. What did he do?
He offered them a deal.
A deal?
He basically told them that they could choose a life of comfort and security instead of risking their necks in this constant power struggle. He'd give them lavish estates, servants, anything their hearts desired. All they had to do was give their military commands and retire.
Wow, he basically bribed them into a life of luxury.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. By taking away their power, he took away their threat. Their ambition was still there, but it was redirected. They went from being potential enemies to, well, maybe not friends, but certainly not a threat.
It's kind of like he hacked human nature.
In a way, he did. He understood that sometimes the best way to deal with an enemy isn't to defeat them, but to make them an ally.
It's such a different approach than what we saw with Michael III.
Right. Michael was blinded by trust in a supposed friend, while Sung recognized the strategic value of winning over potential enemies.
It really makes you think about power dynamics in a whole new way. So we've gone from backstabbing friends in ancient Byzantium to emperors, basically bribing their enemies with luxury in China.
Just a lot to unpack.
It really is. It makes you wonder, how do we apply these crazy historical power plays to our modern lives? I'm not sure my coworkers would appreciate me showing up with a banquet and an early retirement offer.
Yeah, the HR department might have a thing or two to say about that.
Right. So what's the more practical takeaway here? How do we actually use this whole enemies to allies thing in the 21st century?
Well, for starters, Greene is a big advocate for setting boundaries. Like really clear boundaries between your work life and your personal life, especially when it comes to friendships.
Oh, tell me about it. Things can get messy so fast when those lines get blurred.
Exactly. And that's where things can go south quickly.
Yeah.
You end up with all these unspoken expectations. Resentment starts to build. And suddenly that quick favor for a friend turns into a whole unpaid internship.
Ugh. Been there. Not fun. So it's about being strategic about who we let into our inner circle at work.
Exactly. And here's something else to consider. Sometimes there's a lot of strategic value in those people we might think of as rivals, or even former enemies.
Okay, now this is where my brain starts to short circuit a little. You're saying there's an upside to having enemies.
Think about it this way. They've already shown their loyalty by, not betraying you. They're often incredibly driven, have a strong work ethic, and maybe most importantly, they don't have that same sense of entitlement that can sometimes come with close friendships.
So that friend of me from college who was always trying to one-up me, maybe they're not so bad after all.
Maybe not. There's a reason why Mao Zedong said, without a worthy opponent, a man cannot grow stronger. A little healthy competition can be incredibly motivating.
Okay, that's actually a really good point. It's not about actively seeking out enemies, but recognizing that sometimes a little friction can help us grow.
Exactly. But before you go full-on Machiavelli and write off all your friends,
Wait, there's more?
there's always more. There is a flip side to this whole thing, a kind of reversal of the use your enemies strategy that involves, well, friends.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Lay it on me.
Let's just say that friends can sometimes be, let's say, strategically beneficial in power dynamics, but it requires extreme caution and, honestly, a little bit of ruthlessness.
Ooh, this sounds kind of dark. I like it.
Well, Greene talks about how friends can be leveraged for dirty work. Those tasks that might tarnish your reputation but still need to get done, or even as scapegoats if things go really south.
Whoa, that's next level strategizing.
Right. But the key here is awareness. If you're going to play this game, And it is a game. You have to go in with your eyes wide open. You have to be aware of the potential consequences, the envy, the resentment, all those messy human emotions that can bubble up when power dynamics get involved.
So maybe don't test out this particular strategy on your ride or die BFF.
Probably not the best idea.
No.
But on a more serious note, this all comes back to understanding that power dynamics exist in every relationship, whether we're conscious of them or not.
That's such a good point. It's not about becoming some kind of manipulative mastermind.
Right. It's not about seeing people as pawns to be manipulated.
It's more about being aware of how power influences our interactions and making conscious choices about how we navigate those dynamics.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing how these stories from history can still feel so relevant today.
Right. Human nature, it seems, hasn't changed all that much.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into friendship, power, and the fine art of not getting backstabbed, what's one key piece of advice you'd give our listeners?
Choose your allies carefully. And maybe even more importantly, try to understand your potential adversaries. Because in the game of power, knowledge is king.
Truer words have never been spoken. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, remember, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And always, always trust your gut.